The first one that we have for you today is Curb Your Stress, Eat Well. My name is Mariel Munoz-Taraco. I'm a registered dietitian as well as a public health nutritionist with the Windsor-Essex County Health Unit, and I work in the Comprehensive Workplace Wellness Department, where I help local workplaces to promote healthy nutrition workplace environments. I must mention there's a few things to mention before we start. The first one is we are going to be taking up questions at the end of the session. So again, it's going to be through the chat. So at the end of the session, I'll let you know when we're going to be taking up questions. As well, the webinar will be recorded and the recording will be made available shortly after the webinar. And we'll send out the link and a reminder for you if you have to leave the session, or if there's somebody at your workplace that could not make the session today, the recording will be available. And then lastly, because this is the first of a series of webinars, we will be sending out a short survey just to get some of your feedback and see if the webinar was to your liking, as well as get more ideas to potential future webinar events. Also, I'm just getting over a bit of a cold, so if I start coughing, I apologize in advance. Okay, so before we start, I want to go over some of the objectives for today. So we're going to be talking about, we're going to learn about the types of stress and how your body reacts to them. We're going to explore ways to manage the effects of stress on your appetite, and as well as be more productive at work. And we're going to be able to help you to know how to recognize healthy snacks to be able to cope with cravings. Now, stress, what is it? Stress is the feeling that we get when we're under pressure. So when we feel like an event or a specific stressor is threaten our well-being, then our bodies are going to activate a stress reaction. Now, what I must say is that stress does not always have to be a bad thing. So I know stress has a bit of a bad reputation, but actually healthy amounts of stress is good for ourselves, especially for people who are employed in a job. Having healthy amounts of stress is actually going to help you achieve your goals, set deadlines, and just feel a sense of overall job satisfaction. Stress becomes bad and actually can affect our health when we think that the demands of the situation are greater than our resources to cope with it. So when we start feeling overwhelmed, we start feeling that we don't really have the ability to deal with that situation, that is when actually stress can be a bad thing. In terms of stress management and how stress can affect our health, what really matters is how we react to the situation, not the actual situation or the stressor itself. So what that means is that not everybody is going to react to the same situation differently. So for example, somebody who is very comfortable with doing public speaking, if they're faced with the task of going and doing a presentation, that person may not really feel stressed about doing that presentation. But for another person who is not comfortable with public speaking, if you force that person to do a presentation, they may actually feel stress and start this stress reaction. So there's this concept called resiliency, which is our ability to succeed in times of adverse events. So everybody has different levels of resiliency, and depending on your level of resiliency is how you're going to react to stress. So when it comes to how stress affects our risk for chronic disease, it's actually how we react to that stressor, which is going to affect either increase or decrease our risk for developing chronic diseases later in the future. So how is stress and eating related? They're actually very much interrelated, and the reason being is because when your body activates the stress response, the energy demands are higher. So your body, usually in a normal state, your body just, requires a certain amount of energy to perform your daily activities. However, when you undergo stress, your body feels threatened, so it needs to act. And it's gonna, for it to be able to act in this situation, it's gonna demand more energy. And because your body needs more energy, then that's when your body's gonna try to compensate to get more energy or less energy by changing your appetite and your eating habits. I must say, though, that diet and nutrition cannot prevent stress. So the only way you can prevent stress is by dealing with the situation or the stressor that's causing that stress reaction. Diet and nutrition, because of the relation between the energy demands and the changes in appetite, can help you deal or mitigate the potential effect that stress and the stress reaction, the changes in appetite, can have in your health and your risk of developing chronic diseases later in the future. So how is stress and appetite related? And what are the changes that stress causes in your appetite? Well, the changes are actually very variable, and the reason being is because the stress reaction and how people react to stress depends on many factors. So one being resiliency, like I mentioned, people will react to the stressor in different manners, in different ways. As well, it also depends on the duration of the stress, so whether or not the stress is a short-term stress or if it's a constant stress, as well as how important that stressor or that situation is to you. So, for example, going back to the presentation example, if the person believes that the presentation is a very important presentation for, let's say, their career or their personal life, then they're going to put a lot of emphasis on that stressor, and they're going to activate the stress reaction, as opposed to somebody who doesn't really care much about that presentation. It's like, either I do good or I do bad, it doesn't really matter. So it's not going to put so much emphasis on that stressor. However, in terms of the reaction that it comes with appetite, there's a few things that you can do when it comes to stress. Either your body's going to cause you to increase your energy intake, especially foods that are high fat and high sugar, or it's going to cause you to decrease or no change. So again, it's very much dependent on the individual. And because of that, there's a lot more research that is needed because it's very variable, and it's been really hard to research that area because it really depends on resiliency, and resiliency is something that's very, very hard to measure. However, there's been some theories that have been put out there to kind of explain the relationship between stress and appetite. And some of the theories that are put out there depends on the type of stress. So there's usually two types of stress, one being chronic and one being acute. So the acute stress is, a one-time, short-term stress, and I have a bit of a scenario to kind of explain the relationship or the physiological changes that happen when you undergo acute stress. So the first scenario is you're in the middle of the savannah and you suddenly spot a hungry lion running towards you. What do you think your body does? Does it actually force you to stop and eat a snack because you don't know how long the lion will chase you for, and you may need the energy for later? Or is it going to cause you to activate the flight or fight response, where the priority is to mobilize stored energy to fight the lion or for fleeing? And at this point, eating is not a priority, so your appetite is actually going to shut down. Or is it C, does it go in fat storage mode, where you burn less calories and store fat in case you survive the lion attack for later? So in this scenario, in the acute stress, your main priority right now is to survive the lion attack. You have a lion that's coming towards you. It may kill you. So at this point, what does your body do? It's actually your body will do B, which is going to activate the flight or fight response, because again, the priority is to mobilize stored energy to fight the lion. So your body's main priority is to just pump energy to your muscles so you can start going and act in that situation. So at this point, at any point in time, your body, if you're well nourished, you will have stores of energy, and it's usually stored in fat. So at that point, your body's going to break down this energy stores, and it's going to supply energy really quick to your muscles. And it's becoming, at this point, your body's very clumsy with how it's burning the energy, because again, the main priority is just to get the energy out there to your muscles so you can react and fight the lion. So at this point, because of that, then eating is really not a priority, so your appetite will actually shut down. So acute stress, what it does is stimulates your metabolism and decreases your appetite. So again, as I mentioned, your metabolism is what is going to cause you to break down the energy and make it available for your muscles to use, and it's going to decrease your appetite, because at that point, really having a snack for later is not a priority, because there may not be a later. The lion may come and eat you. And another way of activating this acute stress response is exercise. So as I mentioned, stress doesn't always have to be a negative thing. Stress can actually be a positive thing. So exercise, it's a very positive thing, and it's something that we should all, do in terms of having a healthy lifestyle. So exercise is the reaction that it happens in our body, or the triggers in our body. It mimics acute stress. Because again, your body right now, the energy demands are quite high. You need the energy to be able to either do whatever exercise you're doing, and because of that, then your body's main concern right now, it's gonna again break down those fat stores, and then just pump the energy to your muscles so you're able to exercise. Once that acute stress episode, or once that exercise routine is done, then that's when your body will start to replenish those fat storage stores. And it's gonna cause you, it's gonna ask your body or it's gonna ask you to refuel by eating. The next type of stress is chronic stress. So this is stress that it's more of a long-term, doesn't really go away like the acute stress. And the scenario is you somehow managed to survive the lion attack, but in the act you got lost. So you look around and there's no familiar foods available, and a full day has gone by and there's no sign of help. So what do you think your body does? Does it encourage you to exercise and burn as many calories as possible to maintain a healthy body weight? Or does it force you to find familiar foods that fit within your weight loss diet? Or is it C, escaping attack, drain your energy stores so your body goes into fat storage mode where you burn less calories and eat whatever you can find? So again, in chronic stress right now, what happens is you survived the acute stress scenario where your body was being very clumsy with the energy, which is breaking down the energy and sending essentially energy to your muscles for you to be able to act. So you actually depleted your energy stores. And at this point now, you're undergoing chronic stress where you don't know when this event is going to end. So at this point, your body, what it does is it becomes very thrifty with the energy. It actually doesn't want to waste a lot of energy. And so your metabolism is actually going to slow down. So what it does is actually because you drain your energy stores, so now your body goes into fat storage mode. So to build those fat cells again, so you can have it and help you survive this chronic stress environment. So what you're going to do is actually you're going to burn less calories and eat whatever you can find because your body really, essentially what it wants to do is wants to survive. So that's what chronic stress does. It actually reduces your metabolism by as much as 40%. So that's very significant. And as well, at the same time, it causes you to increase your appetite so that you can actually get more energy and just be very thrifty with the energy. And another way that you can activate the chronic stress response is by people who skip meals and who diet constantly. So skipping meals, specifically breakfast, that can actually activate a chronic stress response because when your body goes for more than 12 hours without eating, and that includes when you sleep, then your body thinks that it's undergoing a famine. So it activates a chronic stress response when it actually becomes very thrifty with the energy. It slows down your metabolism because your body doesn't know when it's going to get food again. And when you sleep through the night, you're actually burning some calories. So by skipping your breakfast, you're not helping your body restore the energy that you've lost or burnt as you were sleeping. So especially for people who work, it's very important to have breakfast because that's going to provide the fuel that your body needs to be able to perform tasks, be able to concentrate, be able to just perform those executive functions that are needed in a workplace. Another changes in behavior that is observed when people undergo stress is not only the changes in appetite, but the changes in our ability to resist certain foods and the fact that we crave, whenever we're stressed, we crave certain foods. And there's a lot of research that's undergone that's looked at why that happens. So what people observe is that when people are under stress, people turn to crave high-fat, high-sugar foods, and their ability to resist these tempting foods or these what we call comfort foods is impaired. And the reason is because in our brain, what they have observed is that the area in our brain where stress is actually where stress happens or where the stress response is activated, it's the same area in the brain that it's responsible for our ability to resist tempting foods. And what they see is that when one is being used by one function, the other function cannot happen. So in other words, when you're stressed and you're using that part of the brain for the stress response, then your ability to resist tempting foods is impaired because you cannot use it at that same time. So there is a bit of a logic relationship between why you crave or why you're not able to crave certain foods is because that part of the brain is being busy with dealing with the stress response. As well, at the same time, a term that happens is emotional eating. So again, when you're undergoing physical or emotional distress, you crave certain foods that are high in fat, sugar, or both. And there's actually, again, a lot of research that has gone to kind of understand the relationship of why this happens, and there's some possible mechanisms that have been put forth. The main theory that's been put forth is the fact that foods that are high fat and high sugar actually may have a possible feedback effect in that part of the brain. So what it does is it releases certain hormones that are going to act and actually inhibit the activity in the part of the brain that processes stress. So actually, in theory, then it could be a way to prevent stress. So eating these comfort foods, it actually can, by eating it, releases certain hormones that make you feel better because it prevents that stress response from happening in your brain. That is great in the short term, but in the long term, it really isn't a solution because if you're not able to deal with that stressor, so if you're undergoing chronic stress, you're always going to be turning to those comfort foods. So in the long term, in terms of nutrition and healthy eating, it may actually lead to weight gain. And the fact also that foods that are usually high in fat and high in sugar are very low in nutrition. So what can we do in terms of nutrition to reduce the health effects of stress? So what are the health effects of stress? The fact that our appetite changes, either increases or decreases depending on our own personal coping mechanisms, on the type of stress that you're undergoing, and as well also changes our ability to resist tempting foods and also makes us crave certain foods. So because of that, the nutrition has a very has an important role in dealing with stress management and kind of managing the health effects, not so much as preventing the stress from happening. So some of the main things that you can do in terms of nutrition is to always make sure you get enough nutritious food during the day. And the reason being is that is going to make sure that your body's well nourished. It's going to make sure that your bodies have the energy to act and send that energy to your muscles and your brain to be able to act whenever that stress reaction happens. So how can we make sure that we get enough nutritious food during the day? Well, the main thing is to try and follow Canada's Food Guide. So Canada's Food Guide is a guide that was developed to help Canadians meet their nutrition needs every day. So this guide, what it does is it describes the amount and the type of food to eat from. So if you've ever opened Canada's Food Guide or ever seen it, you see that it would have, depending on your age and your sex, how many servings of food you should have for each food group. So for the food groups that we have, what they did is they grabbed all the foods and they divided them into 4 main food groups. So there are vegetables and fruit, grain products, milk and alternatives, and meat and alternatives. So what it does is the guide tells you again how much to eat and the types of food to eat. For each food group, it will tell you how many servings for each food group to eat according to Canada's Food Guide, so that you're able to meet your nutrient and energy requirements. So in terms of fruits and vegetables, Canada's Food Guide actually recommends that you should get the most food from the fruits and vegetables food group. And the reason being is because vegetables and fruit are actually packed with a lot of nutrients and fiber. And as well, Canada's Food Guide recommends to include at least 1 dark green as well as an orange vegetable daily. And the reason being is because dark green vegetables as well as orange vegetables contain certain vitamins and nutrients that are not really present in a lot of other foods. So for dark green vegetables, they have B vitamin, which is called folate, which is very important for fetuses. So for women who are thinking about getting pregnant or around childbearing age, it's very important to make sure they're getting enough folate, because folate is important early on in the pregnancy to help the fetus's spinal cord develop properly. As well as orange vegetables. So orange vegetables have vitamin A. Vitamin A is great for our eyesight, and it's not really present in a lot of many foods. So by making sure that you're having orange vegetables daily, at least a serving, you'll make sure you get enough vitamin A that you require throughout the day. In terms of grain products, Canada's Food Guide recommends to go for whole grains more often. So if you can make at least half your grain choices whole grains, that's always the sensible choice. If you can make it 100%, that's even better. And the reason being is because whole grains tend to have more nutrition compared to non-whole grain products. So for example, if you look at bread, whole grain bread actually has more nutrition in terms of fiber and more nutrients than more of a processed white bread. In terms of meat and alternatives, Canada's Food Guide recommends to go lean and alternative more often. So if you can make your meals vegetarian and try and include more vegetarian meals throughout the week, the better. And the reason being, alternatives such as bean and lentils tend to have more fiber and less fat than meat products. However, meat and meat alternatives, especially the lean alternative, are always a good source of protein, iron, zinc, and other nutrients. So that's not to say that you shouldn't have meat and meat alternatives. That's just the recommendation just talks about if you can enjoy the alternatives more often, such as bean, lentils, and tofu, you should, just because it is more of a sensible choice. And in terms of milk products, Canada's Food Guide recommends to make your day with milk products, and the reason being is because they're packed with protein, calcium, and B vitamins, as well as vitamin D. So naturally, we're able to synthesize vitamin D from the sunlight in our skin. However, as we age, our skin's ability to synthesize vitamin D from the UV rays actually decreases. And in Canada, being that we live so up north and we don't get enough sunlight, a lot of people tend to be deficient in vitamin D. So for people over the age of 50, it is recommended to get a vitamin D supplement just because of the skin's decreased ability to synthesize vitamin D from the sun. And in terms of fats, I know fats tend to get a bit of a bad reputation, and there was a couple of years where the fat-free craze started. But people shouldn't really be scared of fats. As long as we're choosing healthy, unsaturated fats, we actually need healthy amounts of fat to be able to, live our daily lives. So the things that you should be looking at is the types of fats that you're consuming, as well as how much. So in terms of the types, try for the healthier fats, like I mentioned, saturated fats. And food sources of saturated fats include things like avocados, nuts, and seeds, as well as vegetable oils. And in terms of how much, around 2 to 3 tablespoons of oils is just what we need. We don't really need a lot of fat. In terms of vegetable oils, I tend to get a lot of questions on, which one's better? Should I use olive? Should I use canola oil? And the new craze is now coconut oil, where people are very confused on which oils to use. My response is always, fats are fats, and fats are really essentially calories when it comes to oils. So if you look at a meal plan that requires you to drink a cup of coconut oil to promote, weight loss or health, at the end of the day, it's a cup of coconut oil, a cup of extra calories that you're having, because you only need 2 to 3 tablespoons. So when it comes to vegetable oils, just think, what you're doing with the vegetable oil. If you're deep frying stuff, and if you're, constantly frying stuff, then really you're taking the unsaturated healthy fats and you're making them into more of the unhealthy saturated fats. So really, it's about, how much you're eating, and what you're doing with it when it comes to vegetable oils. So if you're just using oil for dressing in the salad, so such as olive oil, or when you're just baking, then it's not as bad as if you were to deep fry it or just take a whole glass full of coconut oil. So it really is a personal choice when it comes to that. So in terms of having breakfast every morning, and that's also part of a healthy, so as well as following Canada's Food Guide, it should be a good idea in terms of stress management to have breakfast every morning. And breakfast, as I mentioned, is a very important meal because it literally means breaking the fast. When you sleep, you're going around, 8, 9 hours without eating. And as you sleep, you're burning out the calories. So if you wake up and you don't fuel your body with breakfast, then you're not going to have the energy, to be able to perform those mental and physical activities that your job demands. As well, there's been some research that looked at the relation between breakfast eaters and their risk for overweight and obesity. And what they found is that people who eat breakfast were less likely to be overweight and obese. One of the theories that were put out there to kind of explain this relationship was that having breakfast every morning is part of a healthy lifestyle. So people who were eating breakfast tended to have healthy eating habits. That's not to say that you shouldn't eat breakfast, but it really is about developing those healthy eating habits. And I think that starting with having breakfast every morning and making sure that you are well nourished to start your day is the best place to start. One thing that I must mention is in terms of breakfast, it's not just about having any breakfast, but it's about having a healthy and balanced breakfast. So what is a healthy and balanced breakfast? A healthy and balanced breakfast includes 3 of the 4 food groups from Canada's Food Guide. And I've actually put a star next to the food groups that are recommended for breakfast. So the first one being grain products, specifically starchy foods. And the reason is because starchy foods have sugar in the form of glucose, which is the main source of energy for your brain. So for people who, their job requires them to, think a lot, make a lot of executive decisions or perform a lot of executive functions, having that glucose, that sugar available to fuel your brain is always a great idea. And according to Canada's Food Guide, again, to choose whole grain more often. So things like oatmeal, specifically steel cut oats, it has a lot of fiber, as well as whole grain toast. In terms of vegetables and fruit, again, like I mentioned, vegetables and fruit are a good source of fiber. So having things like a banana or fresh berries on top of the oatmeal that you're having, you'll make sure you get some servings of vegetables and fruit in the morning. And lastly, in terms of milk and alternatives, they're a good source of protein and calcium, and as well as vitamin D. So it doesn't really have to be a big. It sounds like 3 food groups sounds like it's a big breakfast, but having like a small cup of yogurt, a glass of milk, or even milk with your oatmeal, you'll make sure that you'll have the 3 food groups to make it a healthy and balanced breakfast. So if you're having oatmeal, you have your grain products, and then you put some fresh berries on top. You have your vegetables and fruit, and then as well as you make it with milk, then you get your milk and alternatives. Now, meat and alternatives, again, like I mentioned, they're a good source of protein and iron, but they're actually not essential to have during your breakfast. But again, they can add variety if you're still hungry. One thing that I must mention with meat and alternatives is to choose the healthier meat and alternatives more often. I know that bacon is very popular for breakfast, and that's not to say that bacon is not a good choice, but it's not the best choice. It's not the healthier meat alternative choice. So having things like eggs or baked beans, it's a better choice than bacon. However, that's not to say that bacon cannot fit in a breakfast. If you have it once in a while, then it's fine. Essentially, all foods can fit. It's just about portion sizes and how often you're having it. The next tip is to keep healthy snacks on hand to cope with cravings. And the reason being is, like I mentioned, stress can actually affect your appetite. So either it makes you eat more or makes you eat less. And depending on which one you have, it doesn't really it's going to affect how you're eating and your eating behavior. So by having healthy snacks can actually help you manage both if your appetite is increased or if your appetite is decreased. And the reason being is, if your appetite is decreased, by having healthy small snacks throughout the day, that's going to help you get all the nutrition you need throughout the day and still play within the boundaries of your small appetite. So you're going to be constantly eating, and at the end of the day, you're going to make sure that you get enough food. If you are the type of person that their appetite increases as they experience stress, then again, having healthy small snacks throughout the day can actually help you manage it, because it's going to help you manage the craving. So some people, have they think that they're hungry, but it's actually the stress response. By having, a piece of fruit and a handful of unsalted nuts within arm's reach, then you'll make sure you have that, as opposed to reaching for, let's say, chocolate or those high-fat, high sugar foods like a bag of chips, which is what your body wants to crave. So by having more of a healthy snack available and make it easily and accessible, then you'll make sure that you can appease those cravings and not go for the high-fat, high-sugar option. So what are some examples of small healthy snacks? Will be, like I mentioned, a piece of fruit and a handful of unsalted nuts, fresh cut vegetables with hummus, or 1 slice of whole grain bread with peanut butter. When it comes to snacks, it's always recommended to have a source of protein and fiber, because the reason being is protein and fiber actually gets digested slower, so this is going to keep you full for longer. So how can we know if a snack is healthy? If you look around in your workplace, a lot of the snacks that are available for us to purchase tend to be packaged. So unfortunately, we have a food environment that doesn't always support healthy eating choices in terms of having more whole foods. So if you look around in your workplace, you'll probably see either a vending machine that has a lot of packaged foods, or maybe look around to see in their cafeteria what they're selling. Chances are the snacks will be packaged. So how can you tell if a snack is healthy? Well, you can read the food labels. Food labels can help you make better food choices, and they were actually designed to help you compare between products. So you can grab 2 products and look at their food labels and see how much nutrition each product provides, and then you can make the healthy choice for you and your family. So what information can you find on a food label? The food label contains two components, one being the nutrition facts table and the other one being the ingredient list. So in terms of nutrition facts table, it tells you how much fat, sodium, fiber, and other nutrients are in a specific serving of food. So the things that you should be looking at, I've actually circled them in red. So the first thing you want to look at is the portion size. So most nutrition facts tables are made for a portion of the full serving of food. So if you have, let's say, a big bag of chips, chances are they've only made it for a cup or 3/4 of a cup as opposed to the entire bag of chips. So again, the first thing that you want to look at is the serving size to see how much, if you were to eat the entire snack, how much would you have. The next thing to look at is fat, and I'm not really highlighting calories, and I know that a lot of people are always worried about calories and they always look at calories. Calories can be very subjective because it doesn't give you a whole picture of what the food actually looks like. So for example, a food can have very little calories, but also very little fiber and very little protein, and very little of any other nutrients, which is things that you need. So in terms of choosing foods, I would rather pick something that has a bit more calories, but also provides me with some nutrition, such as fiber, protein, again, because this is going to keep me full for longer. So calories really is not, it really isn't something that I recommend that you look at. You'll want to get a better picture of the food as opposed to just looking at calories. So again, sodium and then fiber, these are things that you also want to look at when you look at nutrition facts table. And then another thing that we have in the nutrition facts table is the percent daily value. So it tells you the percent daily value is going to help you know how much, if there's too much or too little of a certain nutrient in the food. And the way that the percent daily value is calculated is based on what you need throughout the day, how much, let's say, sodium this item has based on the 100%. So this specific product that you see on the screen has around 3% of however much you would need of the 100%. That's not to say, though, that you were going to use the nutrition facts table to plan meals, because it's not to say that, okay, I had 3% of sodium now, and now I need 97%. That's really not how the nutrition facts table was designed to be used. It was designed to be used, again, to compare between two products. So how can you tell, or how can you use the percent daily value to tell what is a good snack or what is a good food? We have a rule of thumb that we usually use. It's 5%, less than 5% is a little. More than 15% is a lot. So what do we want to look up for to have more than 15%? So have a lot of. Have fiber, vitamin A, calcium, iron, as well as vitamin C. Around the 10% daily value or less, we want to have saturated fats and trans fats together. And then for the 5% daily value or less, we want to look at having less fat and less sodium, which is salt. So the next tip is to limit alcohol consumption, and the reason is because alcohol, kind of like the high-fat, high-sugar foods, it's more of a short-term solution. Alcohol is sometimes used to improve people's mood, but it's actually, and the reason why this happens is because alcohol is a depressant. It actually depresses our central nervous system, so it actually prevents us from reacting or activating the stress response. But again, this is a short-term solution because long-term alcohol consumption can cause a lot of health problems such as vitamin deficiencies, heart problems, cancer, liver disease, and also difficulty with keeping a healthy body weight. And as well, you can develop dependency if that chronic stress or that chronic stressor doesn't go away. Then always relying on alcohol to kind of give you that, improve your mood and prevent you from feeling the stress response. Then it really isn't a solution. You're just sort of putting a Band-Aid solution where you're not really getting to the root of it. And the last tip is to cut down on caffeine. I know a lot of people are very avid caffeine drinkers, and the reason being is caffeine actually disrupts your sleep and can make stress worse. So caffeine is actually a natural ingredient. It's found in coffee beans, tea leaves, cocoa beans, yerba mate, which is a tea. It's very popular in South America. It actually acts as a stimulant, so it increases your alertness, and it gives you that sort of boost of energy to be able to deal with that stressful situation, and it gives you, you know, it sort of prevents your body from feeling tired because it releases um, hormones that are gonna give you that stimulus essentially. But like I mentioned, it's going to disrupt your sleep and make stress worse. And sleep is actually very key in helping you deal with stress, and it actually helps you start your day off refreshed. And in general, adults need around 7 to 8 hours a night. Now, I've heard people say that they're able to drink coffee and have a great night's sleep, and they don't feel like caffeine actually affects them. But what people don't understand is that even when you're asleep, your brain is active. So, if you have coffee, then the activity in your brain is actually increased, and then you're actually using up more energy as if you didn't have coffee after a certain time. So people will actually feel better or after a night's sleep if they didn't have the coffee. So if you're a coffee drinker and you feel like coffee doesn't really affect you, maybe try it one night and try and have your last cup of coffee before lunch, and not have anything after, and see how you feel after a night's rest, and see the difference. In terms of safe amounts of caffeine, it is recommended adults should have around 400 milligrams per day, which is approximately 3 cups of coffee. So what are some of the takeaway messages of this presentation? So the main thing to know is that stress is a normal part of daily life. Like I mentioned, we need healthy amounts of stress to be able to deal with everyday life and be able to succeed in life, and especially excel in our job. Stress can be positive, so when it pushes us to improve ourselves and meet deadlines and be able to achieve our goals, stress can be positive, especially if we have the skills and the resiliency that we need to be able to excel in those situations. However, when we feel like we don't, it just feels like we're overwhelmed and it's too much for us to handle, that's when stress can be positive. So prolonged stress can actually be, which is chronic, can actually be harmful because there's a lot of risk for psychological and future health problems. Now, our body's natural response to stress, and it includes changes in your metabolism, and that's because, like I mentioned, when you undergo stress, the demands for energy are actually higher, which leads to your body kind of matching those demands by changing your appetite. And if you're not able to manage your appetite with, healthy eating strategies, then your weight may be affected, and with that, then your potential for developing chronic diseases later on in life. And lastly, to aim for a balanced diet, the main message that I can give you is to tailor to your own appetite. That's not to say that when people, I guess the takeaway message that I want to put out there is that not everybody's going to react the same. So not everybody, some people under chronic stress, actually their appetite shuts down. Or some people under acute stress, their appetite may actually be increased. So it really depends on the individual. But what you want to do is you want to learn how your body reacts to stress and how your appetite changes whenever you're under stress. So by understanding that and how your appetite changes, then you'll be able to kind of manage it and be more proactive. So if stress is suppressing appetite, then maybe aim for smaller meals throughout the day. And the same way it happens for if stress is promoting your appetite, then it's essentially about learning your hunger cues in your body and how you can kind of deal with what is happening as a result of the stress reaction. As well, do not skip meals and avoid fad diets. I know fad diets, a lot of them ask you to fast for long periods of time, or skip breakfast. But if you're skipping breakfast to lose weight, then you may actually be doing a disservice to yourself because you're going to trigger your body's chronic stress response, which is going to, again, slow down your metabolism by around 40%, and it's going to cause you to crave or increase your appetite and crave certain foods that may not be the best options. And lastly, to beat the cravings with healthy snacks, again, if you are one of those people who are always sitting on your desk and glued to a computer for 7 hours during the day, try and keep healthy snacks on hand and maybe put away the less healthy snacks. So don't have them visible, because in a period of stress or when you're undergoing stress, at that point, your body's just going to need the energy. And if you see a granola, a chocolate bar or a bag chip, that's what you're going to reach out for. In that moment of, your ability to resist the temptations are impaired. So you're just going to go and grab it, as opposed to if you had maybe an apple or maybe some a fruit salad or yogurt with fruit, then you'll more likely be that you'll choose that option as opposed to the less healthy snacks. So now we're at the period where we're going to be taking up questions. Again, like I mentioned, if you have any questions, please make sure you write them in the chat. We're going to try our best to answer all the questions. And if we don't get to your questions in the time allotted, I've put up an email address where you can submit your answers. Submit your questions, and then I'll try my best to get back to you with the answers.